Hello, everybody. Welcome to Watch Mojo and the Inside podcast. We started off this show earlier this year, going through 20 episodes talking about YouTube's 20 years as a platform in relation to Watch Mojo's also 20 years as a company. And after that, we've kind of branched off into different themes each week. We've covered capitalism, censorship, America, and we're kind of on a local stretch now, where last week we talked about the Montreal Canadiens. This week, we're talking about the Montreal Expos on the heels of a Netflix documentary that just came out called Who Killed the Montreal Expos. So I am Rob, your host. With me is Ashkan Karbasfrooshan, our CEO and co-founder. How's it going, Ash? And how did you like that documentary?
First of all, it's going really well. I really liked it. You know, having produced a documentary, I watched it through the lens of storytelling and just producing content and, programming, but also obviously as a diehard Expos fan and Montrealer, I liked it. The doc was produced by Jean-François Poisson. It's always hard when you try to jam a lot of information in like 90 minutes. That's why when you think of like content on streaming platforms, a feature film, it's usually they take one little scene or one little moment in somebody's life and they do a movie around that. Series, you could go deeper. So this was like a one-off. If had it been a series, which I don't think necessarily there would have been demand for it. I think they would have gone a bit more granular, but I thought it was fine. It was good. Surprisingly, I wasn't like angry or depressed. Obviously, a lot of nostalgia. It took me through a lot of different periods of my life, as I'm sure most Montrealers and baseball fans. I thought it was fine. Throughout the story, you heard a lot of like X blaming Y and then Y blaming Z. And ultimately, I want to play a first clip, which is kind of like, we're not giving anything away. We'll start off with a clip, and then that's kind of the inspiration why I wanted to do today's show the way that we're doing it. So,
pour moi, la mort des expos, c'est une responsabilité qui est partagée. Il y a eu les actionnaires locaux qui ont clairement manqué de vision. Claude Brochu n'a pas été capable d'amener des gens dans le stade alors que c'était sa mission comme président de l'équipe. Évidemment aussi, Jeffrey Loria et David Sampson, ils sont responsables en grande partie du départ des Expos. Ils avaient l'occasion de sauver le club.
Everybody wants there to be this moment where all of a sudden the light goes on and everyone says, that's when you tanked the Expos and you did this crazy Machiavellian plot to have the Expos disappear and move to Washington. It just happened. The reason cities lose teams is not one thing, it's not one moment. And I blame myself, I think, in the proper percentage, and I absolutely will always understand the vitriol that's associated with my role in what became the death of the Expos.
Mais ce qui a vraiment tué les Expos, c'est beaucoup plus simple que ça. Ce qui a tué les Expos, c'est l'argent.
Yeah.
So that was the moment when I kind of had a bit of a epiphany, the eureka moment, when I said, okay, if we're going to cover this, and we had mentioned it like a few weeks ago when I heard about the documentary, I was like, okay, I know how to cover it. So they enumerate a number of belligerents and possible culprits. And I do think it's a bit of a cop-out because, money is a means to an end. I could take money and build a hospital, or I could take money and go buy a weapon and shoot a kid in the head, So I think what I want to do in today's show is actually go through the different people and players and parties and enumerate them from least to blame to probably most to blame. And just also, if I may, just because of my history and whatever, like put a little bit of context to not defend or blame anybody. But I did feel, and again, just because it's limited to a 90-minute thing, I felt like it was very, not in a bad way, superficial. I mean, à la surface. Like it was just, they would touch on things. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And as I said, like the first time I went to a game, 1987, I was 9. I was really a hardcore hockey fan. I had some friends who were baseball fans. I thought the sport was pretty boring. Obviously, I played. I don't know about you. I don't know if you were.
I did play. Yeah.
Oh, you did play?
When I was a kid. Yeah.
What was your position?
I was a pitcher primarily.
Okay, cool.
And when I wasn't pitching, I would play like shortstop or second base.
All right. Were you a good hitter as well?
I was a pretty good hitter.
You're a modern day or an old school Shohei Ohtani, basically.
Your words, not mine. Although I know I did tell you that earlier. But
that part you don't have to say. No, so I was really into hockey to watch, and I would play soccer, and I would play baseball, but it really was, like many others, that magical 1994 run, which we'll talk about later. And then, of course, some of you have heard it, so we'll talk a little bit. In 2003, when I was at Ask Men as a executive, but also like a columnist, I basically proposed to the radio station that had the rights to the matches, to the games, to do like a sports business show, because it was a sports network and like my background being business. So I was actually covering sports business before like the Darren Rovels and all these guys who now have built like their brand around that. And then I also, obviously, the 2003 Expos, actually until the last weekend, were in it. So covered the Expos quite a bit. And in 2003 and 2004, I was really, really, really contacting everybody and anybody, turning over every stone, trying to get wealthy individuals, entrepreneurs, business people, corporations to take a look. A bit naive, because I also didn't have the full background. And, to be honest, that is one of the reasons why I actually have alluded to, I was an intrapreneur. I didn't want to be an entrepreneur. But that was the reason I started WatchMojo, like whether figuratively or literally to bring back the Expos. That's when I had like the moment that I said, you know what, in life, if you want to have any impact, you need to be able to make the decisions yourself. You could lobby, you could convince people, you could argue, debate, but in the end, you got to put yourself in a position. And like, I'm Ashkan Karbasfrooshan, I'm not Ashton Bronfman, I'm not Jacob Desmarais, I'm just a nobody, right? So that was really, like, if I've alluded to it, that was basically how I became an entrepreneur. It was just like I wanted to bring back the Expos.
Well, maybe it's not too late. We're
going to talk about it at the end of the show. Yeah.
I agree that the documentary really glossed over a lot of things. It could have been a mini series, or at least like a multiple part film. And I actually have a book right here called Ecstasy to Agony about the 1994 Expos and how everything fell apart for them. So like, there's enough content just on that season to like fill a book, and it was pretty much glossed over in the movie. But
did you? I forgot. I should know how old you are. Were you around the 94 Magical Run? Or did you go to games?
I was 4 years old in the 94 Magical Run. The team left when I was 14, and that's one thing that I wanted to bring up, because obviously I was too young to kind of appreciate things from the same vantage point that you had at the time. But just as a fan, and I know that they framed the Expos as very much a family affair in the film, which I liked, because the team was referred to as Nos Amours, our beloved. It was a very family feeling when you were at Expos games, and unfortunately, the only experience that I got to go see them was towards the end of their lifespan. But it was very important to me, because those were some of the last nice memories that I had with my dad, who passed away at the end of 2002. Baseball was a way that we really connected, and we played together, and he brought me to those Expos games. So even though it was kind of like the writing was on the wall already when we went to go see them, it was still an important memory for me. And so I really hold on to that. And there's nothing that I would love more than to see them come back, honestly.
I did not know that. So sorry to hear that. But no, I mean, look, the Expos, I say as you grow older, like really all you have are your memories sometimes. And whether it's sports or music, I mean, it's not the first time I hear of a bond between father and son. So